Hi, welcome to my video on the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle. What we have here is a parallelogram, and the parallelogram has opposite sides parallel. And the formula for the area of a parallelogram is base times height. This is the base, and this is the height. What I did, if you take and draw a diagonal from M down to T, that splits the parallelogram into two equal parts. So the MHT forms this triangle. So this triangle is half the area. And the top triangle is MAT, and the altitude is, these two lines are parallel. So the altitude is the perpendicular distance between the parallel lines. So if I drop a perpendicular from T up to A, then this height here is the same as this height. So these two triangles are half the base times the height, or we say half the area of the parallelogram. And to illustrate that, we have a parallelogram here, and the area is base times height. The base is the 10, and the height is the perpendicular distance of 4. That gives us 40, and it's inches squared, or square inches. And this is a triangle, so this triangle is half the base times the height. So it's a half, the base is 10, the height is 4. So we can multiply a half times 10 to get 5, and 4 5s is 20. So the area of this triangle is 20. The area of the parallelogram is 40, so it's a half the parallelogram in area. Let's continue. Find the area of each. So the area of a triangle is half the base times the height. The base is 12. The height is the perpendicular distance from the top of the triangle perpendicular to the base, which is 7. Half of 12 is 6, and 6 sevenths makes 42, and it's meters squared. We have another triangle, and the formula is half the base times the height. Notice I always write out, excuse me, I always write down my formula and then I sub in. The base is 9 and the height is 8.4. And when you multiply all that out, if you want, you can take a half of 8.4 or use a calculator. And if you want to take a half of 8.4 because it's even, so that's 4.2. And multiply that with a calculator, you get 37.8. And its feet is the unit, and is feet squared. Remember, area is 2 dimensions, so it's a square. Length is 1 dimension, so it's an exponent of 1. C, we have a triangle, a half the base times the height, and the base is 2 1/4, and the height is the perpendicular distance, 2 2/3. So we have mixed numerals, so that's 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9 over 4. And 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8 over 3. And we can cancel here. The 2 and the 4 make 8 on the bottom, with the 8 on the top, they cancel. The 3 cancels into the 9 3 times, so we get 3 times 1 times 1 is 3 over 1. So the area is 3 yards squared, or 3 square yards. Now, this one is a little bit different. Let's label it, let's call it D. Left off the D there. And you say, how am I going to find the area of this triangle when I don't have a height? Well, since this is an isosceles triangle with two sides equal, if you drop a perpendicular from the apex angle, perpendicular to the base, straight down, because this is an isosceles triangle with this perpendicular, that forms two congruent triangles. That means that this altitude splits the base into two equal pieces of 8 and 8. And this only happens in an isosceles triangle from the apex angle. In other words, if you have a scalene triangle like this, then if you drop it down here, notice that this altitude is not in the middle of this base. It only happens when you drop it between the two congruent sides. Now, since we have a right triangle, we have two sides equal, we can use what we call the Pythagorean property. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. And using this property, the C is the hypotenuse across from the right angle, so that's 10 squared. A is 8, and B we can call it X if we want. 10 squared is 100, 8 squared is 64, and that means X squared, if I leave it there, is 100 minus 64, and that gives us 36. X squared equals 36, so we want to move up right here. That means X equals the square root of 36, so X is 6. So that means the height is 6. So the formula, area is a half the base times the height. The base of the triangle is 16. The height of the triangle we just found out to be 6. So half of 16 is 8, and 6/8 makes 48. So it's 48 centimeters squared is the area of that triangle. Let's continue. And we have a page here that says practice. And practice means pause the video and work out the answers. You can do one question at a time to see if you're right. And here we go. The formula for the area of a triangle is half the base times the height. And the base is 6. The height is 2. And half of 6 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And it's miles because it's area squared. B, we have a base of 2.1. We have a height of 4. So the formula is a half base times height. The base is 2.1. The height is 4. And again, if you want to, because you're multiplying a half times 2.1 times 4, I could take a half of 4 and get 2 and then multiply it to get 4.4. And it's 4.4 millimeters squared. And number 2, we've got a half the base times the height. In this case, we have a right triangle. And just to illustrate it with a diagram on the side here, if you have a right triangle, then that could be the base and that's the height. The two legs of the right triangle are the base and the height. So that means I can let any one of these be the base. So if I go 1 4/5 and 2 1/2, I can go 2 1/2 as the base and 1 4/5 is the height. Anyway, 1 times 5 plus 4 is 9 over 5. 2 times 2 plus 1 is 5 over 2. We change our mixed numerals to improper fractions. And we're multiplying fractions. I always like to cancel if I can. 5 into 5 is once. And we can't cancel anymore. So 1 times 9 times 1 is 9. 2 times 1 times 2 is 4. And 9 divided by 4 is 2 1/4. And it's in inches, so it's inches squared. And notice I changed the mixed numeral to an improper fraction. Makes it easier to multiply. And we have another one, similar to the one we did a while back. We have a triangle with 13, 24. Two sides are equal, so that becomes 13 meters. And since I need the height, there's the base of 24. So if I drop a perpendicular down through here, this is a good skill to have, remembering this. This altitude dropping to the base splits the base into 2 equal parts, hits it at its midpoint, bisects it. we have a Pythagorean property, so c squared is a squared plus b squared. Very, very, very important property in math. C is the hypotenuse. In other words, if you think about it, if you think about a triangle, a right triangle, there's a C, that's the A, and that the B. As long as you have C to be the hypotenuse, when you write this statement out, c squared equals a squared b squared, let C be the hypotenuse. That means 13 is my hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle. 12 is the A, and we could call it, let's call it H this time for the height. So when we find it, we could call it X, we could call it A, we call it B, call it what we want, but let's call it height. So 13 squared is 169, 12 squared is 144, and I have the height squared, so I have 169 minus 144, because transpose we make it a negative, and that gives us a 25, so H is equal to the square root of 25, so H is equal to 5, so the height is 5. So the area of a triangle is half the base times the height. The base is the bottom, which is 24. And the height we just found out to be 5. And we got 3 multiplications. A half times 24. We multiply these two first and write it down, which is 12. And then we got the 5 left. Remember, BEDMAS said we work from left to right, but when we have 3 multiplications together, we can multiply any 2. And multiply gets 60, and it's meters, so it's meters squared. Very important skill, the Pythagorean property of a right triangle. Given 2 sides, you can find a third one using this property. And number 4, we have a triangle. It's an obtuse triangle with an angle right here greater than 90, so the altitude is on the outside. The height is, if this is the base, half the base times the height. Then if 7.6 is the base, then the altitude to this base comes from this vertex, has to be on the outside, so that's a 10. And again, we can multiply half of 10 is 5. And when we multiply 5 by 7.6, we get a 38, and it's 38 centimeters squared. And number 5, the height of a triangle is 4. The base is triple the height. So the height is 4. It says the base is triple the height. So the base is triple the height. Triple 3 times, so the height is 4. So 3 times 4 gives me 12. So we have the base and the height, half base times height. Half of 12 times 4. Half of 12 is 6. 4 6s are 24. And the unit is feet, so it's square feet. So notice, just a reminder, when you're multiplying these 3, I could have taken a half. I could have multiplied the 12 and the 4 to get 48, and then take the half of 48 to get 24. It's your choice how you multiply these 3. And that takes us to the end of the video on finding the area of a triangle. And if you like what I'm doing, click the like button. And if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. And at the same time, hit the notification bell, because there's more videos coming your way. And if you are a subscriber, write a comment on my video if you wish. And visit my math website at www.mathfullyexplained.com. And there you'll get information about me, my videos, and the content that I'm going to have on my YouTube channel. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.